Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to a new episode of A War Room Italia. This evening, I have an incredibly special guest. She is a woman I truly admire very much. She is also a fellow Italian, so I'm proud of her representing Italians abroad, especially in America. And she's been on the news in the world, in Italy, in the United States, because she has been she found herself involved in the creation of the Russia Collusion. And she has an incredible story to tell us, and I have many important questions to ask her. So let's welcome to our show. I'm very honored and proud to introduce you, Simona Mangiante Papadopoulos.
Hi, Guya. Thanks so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be your guest. As you said, a fellow Italian. It's very special to speak for our audience, English audience, both
Yes.
in English. It's very nice.
Yes, they will. The Americans and the English audience will excuse our Italian accents.
Exactly, but it's fun. We like it.
Simona, you are George Papadopoulos' wife, and you have an incredible story to tell us. Now you have, as I introduced, you are in the center of the Russia collusion. Actually, I would call you patient zero because the famous Joseph Mifsud, the famous and the mysterious professor of this Roman university that hooked up your husband and then started the whole, from where it sprung, the whole Christopher Steele dossier and everything. You were the patient zero. You were working in his office in London. How is the story? Could you please tell us more?
Yeah, Guya, this is a story now dated a few years, back on 2018 when I met George. I used to work for this London Center of International Law Practice in London, where Joseph Mifsud, one of the the most infamous character of the Russia hoax, as I call it, has emerged as someone who planted an information to my husband George at the time to create this narrative. And you said something before, it was very interesting. You said the creation of the Russian collusion. Yes, it was a creation, and now many years have, coming to my involvement. I started to date George at the time after all this happened, after Joseph Mifsud approached him in Rome to plant this information and try to build up this narrative. But since then, what is really interesting is that many investigations took place based on what my husband George and myself outed, and starting from Durham. Mueller investigation we saw ended up in nothing, complete fluff. But then we had other investigation investigating the investigators, which obviously came out with the conclusion that the entire investigation was lacking legitimacy, where there were no ground whatsoever to start an investigation. This is probably the most scandalous weaponization of justice in the entire history of the United States. George wrote it at the time a book called Deep State Targets, where actually it's a roadmap how all this unfolded, and we can see that everything is said in this book revealed to be true, has been an incredibly successful book. Ever since, we were very vocal in the media. Myself, I've been portrayed as something like I'm not, like it's this shady Russian national. I'm completely Italian, as you know. But, sort of tragic comic, as we say in Italy,
Yes.
scenario. Because all these characters fall into place to fit a narrative that was unfolding while we were living it. So we were smart enough to understand what was going on and out it and help the investigators understanding what was happening. And besides the contribution of my husband, I also testified in 2019 to USA Congress, and then later on to the Senate as well. I was subpoenaed by
Mhm.
the FBI. So this was really a story that made the headlines back on time on many, many magazines from Italy as well, like La Repubblica, il Corriere della Sera. Now you could read the story a little bit everywhere. Me and my husband ended up at some point on the cover of the Washington Post magazine, which was an incredible honor because it was pretty accurate in many ways. Actually explained the madness behind this narrative. So this became also one of the episode of the series that aired only last December on Tucker Carlson, where we have all the players of the Trump team 2016 telling their story. And so the first episode is about my husband's story, our story, and I invite people to watch it, by the way.
Yes. Well, thank you so much for this perfect introduction to give the whole panorama to the audience of what you have been had to go through, this insanity you have been set up. Like this is, I will show right now the cover of George's book, Deep State Target. Here you can see it. You can buy it all over. It's a bestseller, and it's an incredible book. It illustrates an amazing story that will be studied in the future, in the centuries, definitely, because this Russia collusion is a scandal of enormous proportions. And the way, and the target is the precise word, is because you have been targeted because they wanted a scapegoat. The way they treated you, Simona, has been absolutely disgusting and not worthy of a country like America. And I'm really, really sorry. And I was so sorry when I was reading about this news about you. And, as a woman myself, you were only, your problem was having been in love with a man who has been targeted, and they treated you like a spy. They treated you even you. I remember there was a problem with the Foreign Agent Registration Act that they wanted you to register as such while you were only married to a man that you fell in love with, and this is absurd what you had to go through. So sorry, and so I recommend everybody to read this book and understand the situation that the deep state of America is able enroll itself, to engage itself in order to create a story to disrupt and interfere with the democratic process of the American elections and overthrow a duly elected president. This is what it was. And Simona, how is, and you were saying also, you started a series right now with Tucker Carlson, right? And episode one is you and your story, right? That people can go and watch.
Yes, thanks so much for this. To relate to me as a woman, I think it was pretty challenging to go through this and being portrayed as something so distant from me. But you know,
Yeah.
this ever since my career evolved, I am a lawyer as a background. I work for the European Union, and I started to dig into journalism, actually investigative journalism, and that's where I
Hmm.
came up with different films. One. Based on Ukraine, about the war, the situation pre-war, and now, actually, entire last year we work on this series airing on TCN, Tucker Calrson Network, and
Yeah.
called All the President's Men. So this is walk us through the story on every and each of the inner circle of Trump that were targeted simply for being associated to the president, and everyone share their personal story behind the headlines, but also how their career have evolved ever since. Because we have one common trait, which is resilience, but not everyone could recover from this massive,
Yeah.
images of the targeting that happened ever since,
Yeah.
and starting from my husband, which is, as you said before, the patient zero. My
Hmm.
story, I became as well a witness in the Russia probe and the target, mostly of the media, because yes, you mentioned also this phone investigation, even being the target of the FARA, violation,
Yeah.
but it was just like so ridiculous, when we think about it, that it was more to create a media echo And that's where it comes through manipulation of the media along with manipulation of justice. And that's a collusion machine that we learn to be over time something called the fake news, right? And the Trump
Yes.
is very vocal about it. But there's really something really important to me about this series and very timely. Even we are talking about stories that date of 2000, 18, 19, and even prior to this date of the story of their work in the campaign, is that if these people like my husband in first place didn't talk, and if people like myself didn't help him to spread the truth, Trump couldn't be president today, because this entire Russia collusion machine was designed to delegitimize completely his presidency and his possibility to ever walk into the Oval Office. So the fact that we could overcome and see through all this lawfare and all this fake news is
Yeah.
the result of a painful journey for the people we're mentioning, and I would say
Yeah.
my husband and myself in first line, and how we could unfold the truth and finally change perception. And you can see people don't trust the media anymore, people don't trust the institution. That's why now it's more than ever it's refreshing to see a new administration taking place, to restart and rebuild on good foundation of this basis.
Yeah, yeah. You described the media working hand in hand with the government to fabricate this narrative, which is totally, completely false. There's nothing true out of it. It's not like they from something they create something, they enlarge it. No, they just create from nothing. Situate stories like fake dossiers with stories that don't exist in the world, and they just get people at random. The way they use the lives of the people, like you said, some people still have not fully recovered from the attack of their own government, from this story. I hope they will have the vindication in a way or in another, because these things derail the lives of people. And what you described now with the media, and that is, the famous Operation Mockingbird from back in the decades, when the CIA worked with the various networks in order to create narratives to manipulate the perception of their audience, of the people, and justify therefore acts. And you experienced it on your skin. It is incredible what you went through. Last week or 10 days ago, I also interviewed another person who was involved in the creation, in a full fabrication of the Russia collusion, Patrick Byrne. He was on another side, because I remember that the people were like, yes, yes, this Russia collusion, but there are no Russians. They tried to make you
Russia.
look like a Russian, but unfortunately you're from
I'm
Caserta,
Italian,
right?
exactly.
Italy.
We can be anywhere.
Exactly. So they couldn't say you were a Russian, so they had to find a Russian, and they used the Patrick to create the Russian spy of the situation. And so they from two sides, and so you see there is a Russian, and the Russia collusion hoax is the CIA is real. All this is absolutely insane. So now, what I would like to know from you is, now there is finally people managed to elect President Trump. Okay, to have finally they managed to have the president that, in my opinion, had already been elected in
Yeah.
2020. Okay,
And you
so
open
finally
another chapter here, right?
and a whole other chapter of election fraud. Okay. But now finally they get to have their president. Let's say now the world gets to have this president, because the president of the United States, we all know, especially here in Italy, how it affects all
Absolutely.
the entire world, especially us here in Europe, because
Yes.
they are, yeah. And so now that I see probably Kash Patel will become director of the FBI, there's going to be a new CIA director, somebody else at the DOJ, insomma, there's going to be people that will look into what happened. And I would like to know, Simona, what do you expect from this new administration, because this problem, this Russia collusion, cannot just be put under the rug. It needs a conclusion. It needs, because it broke the soul of so many Americans. It divided America so deeply and so dramatically that it needs to be concluded, like we say, una chiusura, a closure. We need a closure to heal. And the only way to close it is through truth, to know what happened. And people can say, accept it. So, what do you think? Tell me your ideas.
Well, I agree that we need a closure. We have some sort of accountability already in place. For example, there are already FBI that started this investigation. Is in jail. Not many people knows that, but there are some of the characters that started this investigation that have been exposed and punished by the law already. But there is no news that is spread at big time about that. But now we know that the FBI was weaponized. Most recently, Matt Taibbi came with a report as investigative journalist in the United States, came out with this report stating that intelligence agencies were hired to set up uh, certain number of names that he made in his article, including George Papadopoulos, my husband, but even Roger Stone and other people are in the list that were set up with the scope to basically fake crimes that never existed, just to build up this unlikely narrative. Now, why we need to have a closure? Because of course it's been the biggest scandal in American history and affected in first place and targeted in first place Donald Trump. Now that he's back in power, he has the opportunity to restore trust by starting a fresh new chapter that I think will need to get a closure and up to an investigation about where is Joseph Mifsud, why we don't know anything about this man today. And we know there are many international intelligence agencies involved. We have also Italian intelligence that could be of help at this point, because we know he has been located many years ago in Rome, then in Umbria. So we know his ties to Italy were numerous. So I think this is a pattern we should definitely investigate to get to where Joseph Mifsud is right now. Yes, it's time to find answers. But I believe in many ways we already have the biggest answer, and that it has been delivered. And it's also the reason why people could elect Donald Trump already, and that all of that was a hoax, a big hoax. And some of the people involved in this hoax have been held accountable, some other not yet. But by now, everyone knows that this was a fabrication, and that's, I think,
Yeah.
already a good result.
Yes. You mentioned Italy right now, and how he was a professor of this university called Link University. So I did some research at the time, and right now I remember that there are some Italian politicians of the Democratic Party and the right-wing parties, both, that came out from that university. And reading here and there, I read that it is actually like a place that Americans in America, they deem as a place that fabricates a lot of spies. And I was like, oh, that's strange. And I thought, how strange that there are so many Italian politicians that came from that university, or studied or dealt with that university, the same university of Joseph Mifsud. And I wonder, how is it possible that they don't know Professor Joseph Mifsud, which is a typical Maltese name, Mifsud, by the way. And these people, because he's Maltese, because he also had some physical facial features that don't go really unnoticed, because he was quite a particular man. He wasn't just like very plain. He was a little chubby, one of those people you would remember, honestly. And he cannot just disappear. And since at the time of the Russia collusion creation, I remember with who was the prime minister at the time, Renzi, who was it?
Yeah, yeah.
Renzi. And I remember he was a big buddy with Obama, because because Renzi, the Americans don't know. This is my opinion. He was one of those guys that got to power and he was full of himself. And he was one of those guys that he just the idea of going with Obama to a party at his house, he felt God on earth.
Yeah.
And yeah, and therefore he probably put at the disposal to Obama whatever he needed.
Yeah, that's what happens when you don't have, you're a fan and you're not a leader.
Yeah, exactly. So where I want to get at, Simona, what did you think? Do you think, because you also remember, I remember Renzi in an interview, but at the time from some international like Sky something, and he was talking about, and they asked him, what about Donald Trump, and he said, oh, Trump is compromised, this and that. And he was talking wonderfully about Hillary Clinton and Obama. And it was evident that we did contribute in a way or another in or put our intelligence, like you said, at their disposal. Now that you mentioned it, I hope that Giorgia Meloni has been praised recently by Trump. We heard him say, fantastic leader. She gets so much along with Elon Musk. It seems like there's a new team. Okay,
Yeah.
maybe. Do you expect the Italian government to collaborate a little bit with the American new FBI, whatever, to release some truths? What did you think?
Well, I hope so. I hope this will be, one of, the priorities of Italian government. I believe definitely Giorgia Meloni is the best person in place to collaborate in this extent. And, when you mention like Renzi, Obama, I always smiled because I think this is just an old chapter that didn't age well. So whatever they said, it was so ridiculously facade that history taught us in this last decade that truth always comes out, and eventually people are not that naive or not that fool, and they see it through. And that's why we are here where we are with these leaders and government, because people are tired of all this fluff, fakeness, and constructed narrative. So we are definitely walking into a new era of boldness, of a completely different approach to what is considered by the left everywhere in the world politically correct. I think it's
Mhm.
time for removal filters and just go straight forward to what matters. And what matters is the truth and what people expect from politicians, which is to improve their lives. So the administration of Trump is far from being fully formed right now, but I know are on the good trend to create a team of fighters and winners at the same time. And I'm really very, very excited to for this new year to come.
Yes, and we have to find the Joseph Mifsud,
Oh yeah.
Simona.
I
We
mean,
have to.
Joseph, if you're listening, please say your side of the story. The time is right. Your brother's
he
first
has to
is
he
not
has to
you.
come forward, because like you said, and I wholeheartedly believe that what you said is so true. Truth always comes up sooner or later. There's nothing you can do about it. Lies, in Italy we say, have short
Good
legs.
leg.
Yeah,
Exactly.
right.
Le bugie hanno le gambe corte, let's say.
Esatto, le bugie hanno le gambe corte. Lies have short legs. They last only for a little time, but then they crumble on themselves because they crush against truth. The reality, the logic, and which is universal, which is massive. And so you can bring lies that you have to lie to cover the lies, and then sooner or later they just they just die off. And Joseph Mifsud, if he wants to come forward, and I'm sure the new administration will be have clemency if he collaborates, but he has to come and bring a closure to this chapter. And probably he himself has been used, and
Yeah,
he's
yeah.
for sure. And what about your future, Simona? Simona, to the audience, she is a successful lawyer and a journalist. You practice law. You're an Italian lawyer, but you practice law also in the United States.
No, I
No,
don't. Actually, my law career is was mainly as a legal advisor at European Parliament for 7 years prior me moving to United States. Never since I moved, I started to work in the media. So I am full
yeah,
time in the media, some of entertainment as well, but mainly as a journalist. I worked already on 3 films on Prime Video, on TCN, and hope people will check it out. Because when you come from a
yeah.
place of awareness, you always put a lot into that. I mean, it's really interesting to see the level of details we can provide in these films.
Yes, we will. I'm gonna be putting the links to your series, to your media, your social media, and everything under the here below. You can read them already. And what do you expect for the future, Simona? I would like for the future in globally, and also for you, your personal future. Is George Papadopoulos seeking a position in the new administration? I think yes, right? Can you reveal something?
About that, of course, I mean, obviously, would be the best qualified person. I would like to remind that it comes from an expertise of foreign policy in first place. So
Yeah.
I can't comment about it, but definitely, I mean, if you guess, there is a reason.
Okay, so you can't say too much,
Like
but
I mean, one thing about that I learned to sometimes to keep my mouth closed.
okay.
It's like so I've been like very Italian actually in the past when they were accusing me. There are many interviews where I literally speak with my hands, and people saying, "Oh, she's Russian." Okay, go to Trump in Italy and see how people I just study better the body language and the accents as well. They say that I have a Russian accent. I mean, like, how can you make it up? Definitely, in my future, I see a feature film, "The Spy Who Loved from Rome."
Okay.
Something like that. I'm joking about it, of course, but this became it's a story with a happy ending for me already, because all this has been unmasked. That Trump is back.
Yes.
Is the first president to fulfill 2 terms, and separated by like not consecutive for 2 terms, which says a lot. De facto has been in the heart and the wishes of Americans for 3 terms already, because
Yes.
in 2020 people were very frustrated about
Yeah.
what we can call an actual fraud, and I believe it happened. But
And sorry, and because of your experience in the European Parliament and dealing with European matters, von der Leyen and all the you know all these characters that are part of this decaying dinosaur, which is the old global order. Because we are entering a new golden age. We are entering also because. Humanity is changing with AI, with technology, with new media. The world is shifting into a new era, independently from the politics. And then the politics are sometimes are like the fruit of the generations that are changing. And the European Union is like, I see it like a tank, the tanks of carro armati, the tanks of the Russian wars of 100 years ago. They are old, they're obsolete. What do you expect us as Europeans? What do you think the future of Europe? Will it become? Will we regain some more independence, or we cannot be under this Soviet Union like for more?
no, it's a very good question. And when it comes to European Union, as someone who served and trained, educated myself, and partially in Brussels as well. I had my heart into the European project, of course, but I
Yeah.
think it's a wonderful project who failed into many ways. And you made a good point. It's not compatible to the level of where the world is going today. So there are two options for the future of the European Union. Either we reassess its foundation, renegotiate different ways of member states participating into this project. Either it collapses and we go back to what we used to be before, and replace some of the most the pillars that made this union valuable with bilateral agreements, multilateral agreements. So when it comes, for example, to immigration, European Union is the reason why we have these uncontrollable waves of migrants. Uh,
Hmm.
in our border, that we, many people blame Giorgia Meloni, always said there is no way you can face this issue without renegotiating your access when it comes to immigration policies, or exit. There is no other way. So it's really, it comes to what we prioritize, and that which are the costs of allowing all these uncontrolled masses in our borders. We know there is this rule in place where we should distribute them by quota, but it's not feasible in many ways. So this is one of the issue. Then, when it comes to over regulating policies like agriculture, which has affected enormously farmers, for example, in different member states. So this is also has been something that no one really talks about, but has also its impact. Inflation we never recovered from, since we have in place the euro as a currency. This is another chapter nobody talks about as well.
Yes.
I believe there is no future for the project as it was conceived by its founders, and
Mhm.
rather than evolving, should be actually resetted completely.
Yes, I agree. Well, the European the Union, in my opinion, has always been that the big. It has been founded on wrong basis, without considering the fact that every European country was. We are extremely different from each other. Aside from we having our own currencies, our own mentalities, I was each economy. It's not just a currency. The
Language,
economy, the language, but
history.
the history, the economy itself of a country is different in Italy. For example, in Italy, we are small, medium companies. In Germany, there are more big companies and small. In Italy, we have artisanship. We that one of that we export. For example, I come from a region, northern Italy, where we do. Uh, for example, they just fixed the Notre Dame. Where do you think all the artists? They came from Italy. We go and do these special works that
Don't
are
say that to
family
France.
businesses.
Yeah.
So the way the economy is built in Italy is completely different from the way it's built in Germany or in Holland or in France or in Spain. And we have nothing in common. Not only we don't have anything in common, but there's a rivalry. We don't like the French, the Germans, or whatever, you know. And we went through world wars, we went through wars for millennia. Okay, how can we put together this and force us to like each other, to share values, to share the idea of immigration, this fit for all ideology that nobody asked for. It was completely wrong from the beginning. People are people with souls. We are not robots. We're not rocks. You cannot just impose a law and we execute like a computer. And they never took into consideration the human part of this union. And I have always believed it was going to crumble for us. Like you said, inflation, whatever, the lira, we had the Italian lira overnight. Everything they everything doubled. The exchange rate was 1 to 1 with the Deutsche Mark, but it was 1 to 2 with the Italian lira.
Yeah.
Overnight, we had half of our money stolen from the European Union. Guys, I mean, this was.
Yeah, it's also when we talk about the way it was founded, you can't really consider a union that lacks a constitution and an
Yeah.
army. We don't
Yeah.
have that. So
Yeah.
it's really something that it's artificial. It was artificial, and there are of course there is a space for a freedom of circulation of goods and people, which is, but this is Schengen, and we could have done it.
And
This
nobody
is
asked
Schengen, and we
us.
could have done it
By the way,
differently. You don't need to be uphold and give up sovereignty on all the other policies
yeah,
that have been, affecting mostly the stronger member states. Because let's be realistic, who benefit really from the European Union is the countries that we call and
the receivers.
receivers, right? L'Europe à deux vitesses, as they say in Brussels, to
Yes,
speak.
please
So the
explain to the Americans what the receivers and the donors are in our union. Please, just
well,
briefly.
that's where you have this bunch of Eastern European countries that have recent access, so whose economy were completely collapsed. So that by proximity to the big funders and proximity geographical proximity to European continent, they were included with more problems than other. So basically, of course, we helped them recover from their economies, but we took on our shoulder enormous weights. And so let's say countries like Germany, Italy, France, and certain extent also Spain, took on the debts of all these countries, and so an additional burden with some of them were a former member of the Soviet Union, right? Think about them. And here we are accessing the European Union, taking the burden of their debts, their financial instability, and everything else. And as you said, when there is no connector into the history and the economy, it's very difficult to uniform solution for all. And that's what European Union would like to do with common policies, being a unifier, and this failed.
Yes, practically what the deal is, the fantastic deal that nobody asked us to get into, that nobody asked them to sign. They just said, this is the deal and shut up, is the founding, the major Italy, France, the UK, now it's out of Germany, I don't remember who else, Spain, I think. They said, okay, we are the rich countries, okay? So we, Italian people, give every year to the European Union, let's say 100 billion, but we
Yes,
will give them back to you. We
no,
will
never.
to be member. You gave us 100 billion. We will give them back to you minus a little bit that we will give to those poor countries. So we gave 100 billion and we receive 70. Okay, and I think that what is the net negative of billions that we give to the European country, to the European Union each year? Do you know?
Well,
Italy,
it's really, really big one. Like I don't remember exactly,
15,
but it's the point. Like we have the
15
biggest
billion. So
country.
this was the
We have
deal, and nobody asked us to get to. It was
no,
like
no.
it was a referendum.
And also, don't forget, with I was actually, thanks God, they didn't allow Turkey to be part of the European Union. But I remember when I was working there, all the socialist group was advocating for inclusion of Turkey, and I was like, all right,
Yeah,
are we going to simply to insert in our Schengen space not only different culture but religion? Let's talk about it.
religion
Let's talk
completely.
about the Jewish
And it's not Europe. Turkey is not Europe.
not.
Ah,
So, and I remember this was, I these handless hearings in
yeah,
Strasbourg talking about that. And,
yeah.
thanks God, this didn't happen.
No,
you
no.
know,
Just imagine.
just saying like after this, and they were calling like Europe to speed, l'Europe de vitesse, like we had this incredible, parallel countries, and you have the core, even what is perceived as European identity is very confusing, right? Because
Yeah,
when come from such a different and deeply rooted culture. Things about us, descended from the Romans, and we have to talk to
yes,
the barbarians up there. I mean, like,
yes.
again, I sound crazy right now, I know, but it's just like
No, no. I fully
right?
understand.
And there's nothing, of course, it's beautiful to embrace culture, but
Yes.
the extent of knowledge, not making a melt pot of things that have nothing in common with each other.
No, assolutamente, absolutely. It's identity, who we are is what we are. I mean, our spirituality. Like I said, we're not rocks. we are human beings. It's something that is a miracle, it's something divine. It's something that you cannot just take out with a signature on a piece of paper or a law. And like native, what does native, a native of a nation, the word nation comes from
Exactly.
nascere, born.
Born.
So you don't become a national just because you come from a ship from the other part of the world. A nation is formed by people that not only are born there, but are born from parents who were born, that were born, and evolved in that nation, in those cities, in those lands, and breathed that air and ate that food and fought in those lands for generations, and recognize your face in the face of the people you encounter in the street. So this is what makes us feel safe, what makes it, we recognize ourselves in the other. And we as Italians, like you said, we know this, we feel it, we understand it fully, because even Italy itself has been united only in the 1865. And earlier we were,
Regno di Sicilia, I was in the kingdom of the two Sicily myself, and
yes, yes,
it's really incredible. There are many people who would love to get back to that in some
yes,
form of
that's
it. But I mean, I just I get exactly what you're saying, and I think there is something really twisted recently that we
yeah,
give negative meaning to the terms like nationalism or populism as well.
yeah,
Nationalism is not in any way discriminatory towards something else. Is actually a matter of identity, feeling rooted in your identity. Inclusion doesn't mean that you can feel deeply nationalistic in first place. So
of course,
it's just as a twist that has been
very,
mainstream
very.
in a certain way. So I think there's a value in nationalism, and there's a value in populism as well, because people,
It's a
again,
very good point. It's a very it,
people,
it,
the people, not
it's
the elite, decide for the people, and this is democracy. If you don't like it, change system.
absolutely, and
Absolutely.
it's a very good point what you say. Nationalism is loving your nation. It doesn't mean hate the other.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's not like I can love my nation and still love the other populations. We have to live with respect. We have to respect each other. Some cultures are compatible to live together. Some cultures are incompatible because we have a completely different way of imagining and the structure of the society. There are two societies that are impossible to blend together, and we cannot live with a population that stones LGBT people, or that is in their enshrined constitution to beat the wives. In our culture, as
Exactly.
Italians, we study history. We have the romantic periods in which we write love poems to women, and we always had this attitude towards the gentle sex, we call it. Okay, so we have a completely different approach towards them, towards the women. And these some things cannot go together. But what you said is very, very, very important. The nationalism has been twisted into believing that it is something wrong. It's like saying I lock the door of my house or lock the borders of my house, not because I hate you, but because I love the people in my country, because I love the people of my house and I want to protect them. And so this concept has to be recalibrated into the real meaning. And also the fact that just because somebody from the other part of the world landed in my land and now expects me to believe that he is Italian. No,
No.
you're not Italian. You
No.
are somebody from the other part of the world who lives in Italy,
And,
period. And
well,
if your son is born here, he is the son of a guy who comes from the other part of the world and is living here. Just like this is how I.
it's interesting because we got to the point where uh, that's not simply like they feel Italian. Actually, they feel exactly what they are. They feel very deeply rooted in their culture. They just would like
Yes.
to import their culture here, which is even worse. I mean, at least I'm saying inclusion presupposes that you respect. And also, Europe is not America. America was born as a
Wow.
coexistence of different culture, and they grew together. And and that's completely different construction. When you come to countries that are as old as Italy, or as old as France, or as old as every Greece, how can you possibly even talk like being this? We are at the end of the day the result of our
Yes.
roots, our
And
history.
even in
And
America,
there's
which
nothing wrong. I mean, like, I actually embrace other culture. I love to learn other cultures. So this also stigma that protecting and somehow your identity is racist. It's a deeply twist of what racism really means. So it's really sad to be labeled, in a different
no, no,
different fashions by people who use terms that don't really understand. Think about Giorgia Meloni. She actually makes this point many times. She talks about the importance of your roots, the Italian identity, right? She's the only one using the term patriotism. We never heard any leader before talking about patriotism. It's something that I breathe in America, how proud people are to belong to this flag. And that's something really
yeah,
inspiring, right?
yeah,
So when we come to the Italian background, you see people really, they're not used to that concept anymore. And you have someone like Giorgia Meloni, is a young woman as well, who's
yeah,
there propagating these values and defending
yeah,
Italian flag as well, and people accusing her of being a fascist. I said, why ignorance took over so bad that people don't even know this chapter of history, don't even know what they're talking about, right? So it's there are a lot of terms that have been misused to label certain things, and we should be unapologetic and keeping telling our thoughts without the fear of being labeled, right? Because most of this politically correctness stem from ignorance, and people don't even know what they're talking about. So, I like,
yeah,
you know,
very interesting. Yes, yeah, political correctness stems from ignorance and the insecurity of the person, and so he'd rather say what everybody else says than say what he believes. The truth is, like you said, patriotism is a beautiful word. It comes from pater, father.
pattern.
It is honoring and loving your father or your motherland, and it is a virtue to be a patriot, not a flaw. And yes, the United States of America, like you said, is an experiment. In fact, everybody calls the United States of America a beautiful experiment where it welcomed all cultures, all people that wanted to escape from their own countries or find fortune or settle in a new land. And but even in America, as you will see, the different cultures at the end, like osmosis, it happens in osmosis. The Mormons settle there, the Quakers over there, the people from the Italian mafiosi over there.
Yeah,
The Greeks, they have Little Italy and they have Chinatown. And even there, the people, because it's innate. It's innate. It's
what's
human
beautiful,
nature.
and I love about America that everyone cherish their roots because they know where they come from, but
Yeah.
they all belong to America.
To America.
And
Yes.
that's the wonderful, I would say,
Character
achievement and
trait.
inspiring achievement in the United States in many ways. So everyone knows exactly who they are, where they come from, but they all belong to the same country, and they all would die for the flag. That's what I love about American patriots, and that's what I love about MAGA.
Because I too am, I love America, because what you said, what ties them together is the idea that they of freedom, because wherever they came from, they left because they went to America because of the idea of freedom. And what the Obama administration was trying to do with Obama and all the deep state was take away freedom, and that united all the Americans, from the minorities to the Elon Musks, to everybody. They united all the people who were in America for freedom, because that is the one thing that keeps them together, and it is beautiful. This ideal. Guarda, Simona, I thank you so much for this fantastic interview. It was a true honor sharing our hearing your story. I will show again right now that the cover of George's, your husband's book. And can you? What would you like to say in conclusion? Where can people follow you? What is your next project? What can we look at
Well, thanks
from
so
you?
much. So it felt like being sit at home around a cup of tea or coffee, talking to you. You can find me on X, Simona Mangiante, on Instagram, Simona underscore Mangiante underscore. You can follow all my work there, and don't miss All the President's Men, airing now on Tucker Calrson Network. It's really a timely and important series. Thanks.
Okay, grazie Simona.
Grazie.
Grazie ancora, and thank you very much. And I hope you will come back. And I wish you, we are almost at the doors of Christmas. So Merry Christmas to you, your family, and all the best.
Grazie, likewise. Thank you so much. Grazie, Guya.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Okay, thank you everybody for watching, for staying with me and Simona in this fantastic interview. I hope for those who still didn't know her that you found in her a fantastic person who she is and somebody else to follow closely. And I'm sure she will have a fantastic career as a journalist and in the United States. And thank you so much for following me, and see you next time. Ciao, ciao.